Hello everyone, this is Anna from Our Paper Paradise, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this Dreamcatcher. So if you picked up your kit, you should have in there 2 packs of strips. You will have 2 brown circles. I will teach you how to make those circles, that's why they're not made yet. A circular grid, a bunch of ribbons, and your instruction sheet. On top of this, you will also need a slotted quilling tool, some glue. I use Elmer's glue wall. And you will also need some sort of backing like a corkboard or poster board, something that you can put pins on, and of course the pins. So let us start by showing you how I made those circles that you have on your kit. For this, I used an old roll of packing tape. This one still has some packing tape on it, so the paper won't stick to the card of the roll itself. And I just use this because it's what I have lying around, and it's very useful for ornaments and other such things. And I take a strip and start rolling it around. I'm going to place a little bit of glue on this side here and a bit on this side here, and then I'm just going to bring them together. I always make sure they are aligned, so before the glue dries I will push everything into place. And you got the first layer. We are going to make that circle with 4 strips, so 1 down, 3 to go. Now I put a little bit of glue on that starter right there, and I take another strip and place it right against where the other one ended. Again, I'm making sure it is aligned with the one on the bottom. And then while I hold this, I take the glue and just do a line of glue along the strip. And then I go with my fingers. My nails are actually creating a trail using the bottom strip as a guide, and I'm pushing the top strip down as I guide it to be on top of the other strip. That way it's always aligned, and it's okay if it's a little bit off. You still have time to move it a little bit as you glue. The glue is not dry yet. That's 2 down. We will continue the process right where the other one ended. Put a little bit of glue. Last one. And there you have super easy to make a ring. Now for the smaller ring, you have this half strip here, and you don't need anything special to do it either because you already have a tool that is perfectly round. So what I'm going to start by doing is kind of soften the paper by giving it a little curl. That helps me when I'm going to curl this. And I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on the start there, just so it sticks. And bring it over. Again, I want to make sure that it's aligned there. Then I put a string of glue and curl the rest of it. There you have it, the 2 circles that you didn't have to make. Now you know how to make them. So once we have that done, we are going to start by creating the pieces for the feathers. For that, we are going to take the pack of strips that has the brown ones on it. Something I forgot you also have in your kit is these 2 template coils. And we are going to be using the bigger one to make these pieces for the feathers. So I'm just going to start with any one of these pieces, any one of these strips. And we start by taking the strip. The tool has a slot in it. We're going to put the strip in the slot. Bring the tool all the way to the end. And then we're going to start curling. Now you can curl away from you like I'm doing, or towards you. It really doesn't matter. It's whatever works best for you. So notice how I'm holding the strip like that. I'm not holding too tight. It's just guiding it as I roll. Once you're done, we are going to take it off the tool. And then we are going to use this little template and put the one we just created on top of it. Let it open. Once it's the same size, you take a little bit of glue and glue the little tab down. And you've created a loose coil. Now the process is going to be the same for all the pieces of the Dreamcatcher. It's all loose coils. At some point we're going to use the smaller template instead of the bigger one, but the process is always the same. You slide your strip into the tool, you curl it up. Now I'm being pretty loose on how I curl this, so I'm not putting a lot of tension. I'm not holding the paper a lot when I'm rolling. So when it opens, it will open to the same size as this guy. That's important because if you tighten it too much, then it won't open as much. And you'll have to just let it sit there for a while you curl the other ones. So by the time you're done, you have something that, see, this one is already bigger than that one. No problem. We can just kind of push it into fitting the same size and then glue it down. Next one, same process. let's say you're doing this and it falls out of your hand. You can see it's bigger than the other one now. There's no problem. You can just pull the little tab while you're holding the center and it's now tight again. And you just use the guide to get it to the right size. Now, like I said, I'm going to be doing the same thing with all these strips and then with most of these strips. So I'm just going to speed through this and just know that once you're done with your first pack of strips, set them aside so you don't confuse it with the other ones. And then you can start the same process on these guys. You will notice that there are a few strips that are a little shorter. You just put those aside because once I get to that, we'll reiterate what we need to do. So I'm just going to speed through this and see you on the other side. Moving on to the next batch of strips. Continue with the exact same process. Don't forget to keep them separate from these guys so you don't get confused later on. So this guy came undone. Obviously I didn't hold the glue long enough to let it dry. So I'm just gonna pull it back a little tighter. And there's the mark where the glue was exactly. But if you feel like you need to remeasure, you can remeasure and then glue it down again. Now the reason we are using these templates as a guide is because we have a pretty circular design. So we want to make sure that the parts of this design are more or less the same size. So it results in an arrangement that matches this. If you have one that is smaller than the other, then it will not line up and it won't make a pretty little design like you want it. This said, the coils don't have to be 100% the size of the template. If there's like millimeters of difference, that's fine. It's just a guide to help you. And yours might be a different color because I make them out of scrap paper, so whatever scrap paper I have around at the time is the color they are. Okay, now most of the work is done. All we have left are the smaller strips. And for those, we are going to do the same thing, only we'll use the smaller template as a size guide. So exact same thing, just slide the strip into the quilling tool and start rolling. You reach the end, take it off, let it open to the same size as the template. You see, I always use these two fingers and these two fingers to make sure they match. This is more of a feel thing than a see thing. So if there's no gap there, they match. And I can take it off and glue it down. repeat 6 more, 5 more times. So now that we have all of these made, you're probably wondering, well, the Dreamcatcher does not have any circles in it other than the outside and inside ones. So how do I make these into these? Let's see. That is fairly simple. Let's put it like that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take any of the coils you made and we're going to hold it between your fingers like this and squish on both sides so you get the eye shape. Now when I'm squishing, I'm always trying to, I'm not sure if you can see very well, but there's the seam of where the strip ends, and I always try to put that on one of the edges where I pinch, just to hide it. It's not mandatory, it's just something I like to do. Pinch. And you are going to do this with all of them, even these ones over here. They all get the same shape, even the small ones. So I'm just going to spit through this part and I'll talk to you at the end. Having this finger injured, I cannot use it to help me push the things down like I'm doing on this side. So it's kind of harder to get a nice distribution here. It also looks like I'm super fancy. And I have my pinky up while doing this. But really, I'm just a klutz that got a cut on her finger. Okay, now that we have all the shapes done, we can start somewhat assembling this little guy. Let me move this over here so you can see the original. And that's where the corkboard or foam core or something you can put your pins on comes in handy. You want to put your circular grid on top of that, and we are going to bring out your big circle. I hope I'm able to show you this. So if I put the circle down, it doesn't match any one line, but it's in between two blue lines. So I'm going to put some pins, and I'm putting them not on the red lines because we're going to use those to assemble that. So we don't want these guys interfering with them. So I put one on there, and I'm going to put another one on the opposite side of that just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to put another one on this side. And another one opposite of that. All in between the red lines. So now this is more or less secure. It's more or less in between the two blue lines. This one needs to be a little less stretchy on this side. And you can adjust it, move it around a little bit just to make sure it sits nicely there. So we are going to start from the outside, moving in, just to make things a little easier. So these little guys, you want to make sure they're all very similarly squished. We don't want some that are thinner, some that are fatter. We want them about the same because this is going to be a symmetrical design. And we don't want weird stuff happening here. So these guys will go where the red lines, the full red lines are. So you can already put them in place. Once you have that, I'm going to go in and put a little bit of glue right where they were touching, and then I'll bring it back in. Now, since we're going to be putting other pieces around these guys, I want to secure them with pins after I put the glue in. So I put one pin on that side, right up against, right laying against the border. And then I line it up with a line and I put another pin in. And I'm just going to go around and do that same procedure with all of them. Little bit of glue on there. And you want to keep pressing your border down, as you might be able to see or not, I'm not sure. But it likes to lift up as I start putting pins down and stuff. And you just have to keep pushing it down. Make sure everything is gluing right. Don't be afraid to move your work. Like if you need to see where it's hitting, you can turn it around and make sure it's right there on the line. It's better that than thinking it's right and then in the end it's all messed up. These are just regular pins, they're nothing special. You can also put the glue on the edge of the little coil there and then bring it against the outside circle. I always say use as many pins as you need, but also as little as you can, because once you start working, if you have a ton of pins, it's going to be hard to place the other shapes down because your hands won't fit in there. Okay, so if you look here, then the next step is the cream shapes. These little guys, they start on the dotted red line and they end right up against the end of these blue ones. So as you can see, they fit in there nicely. You can pinch them more if you need to. You can squish them a little more to be a little less long. You just have to put it there and see where it hits, see if it's nice. If it fits nicely, then you don't have to do anything to them. If they don't fit nicely, then you adjust them a little bit like I showed you to fit that right there. So for these guys, we are going to put some glue where that dotted line hits. I'm going to spread it a little because we're going to have two hitting there. And then I'll put some glue on the side of this blue shape here. And we are just going to slide this in there, making sure it hits on this side of the dotted line and just there. Now I'm going to put some glue on this guy. And I'm putting it on the side and the bottom. So I'm bringing it around that blue shape. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the side of here too, just so they glue together nicely. Here we go. Basically, I want to create a structure that won't fall apart once we have the Dreamcatcher ready. So the most connections I can get in there, the better. This looks fine. And I'm just going to go around and connecting everything together, really, until I'm done with this layer. And as you can see, I'm just sliding these guys in here and I'm not messing too much with them. So the pins I had put in there to start with are kind of keeping everything in shape because I'm not fussing too much with it. I just put the glue in there and then I slide these guys in and just adjust them to make sure they hit the right spots, and that's it. I'm not jamming them around or anything like that. All right, next step are these darker teal shapes, and they are going to be in between the red lines here. And we probably want to squish them a little more just to make sure they more or less hit the ends of each of those guys. They don't have to exactly match the ends there, but they do need to fill out that gap. And that's something that I always tend to do when I'm doing a design is before I glue anything down, I put them where they need to be and I make sure everything is fitting nicely before I go in with the glue. It just helps me have less headaches. Because if I had glued several of them and then one didn't fit in right, I would be in a bad situation because I would have to remove everything from that was already glued, and that's not easy. Okay, that looks to be nice. We want to make sure there's a little gap in between the ends of these guys because these will go in there. So when you glue, just keep that in mind. Now I'm just going to slide these back And I'm gonna put the glue on the cream shapes that are already glued down, and then I'm gonna slide them back in. Slide back, put the glue down, slide back in. You don't need to press them or anything. This glue holds pretty fast. If you find it hard to move these things with your hands, you can also grab some tweezers and move them out and in with the tweezers. Okay, now it gets a tiny little bit trickier because we have to put this guy in the center there and measure it by eyeballing it. So we're not measuring anything actually. So we kind of have to make sure it's more or less centered. And then we have to put pins down to keep this in place while we glue the last row of shapes down. Okay, well, yeah, pretty much. Okay. So this gets a little bit trickier. We want these ones also to be a little more squishy. And these guys are going to go in between the gaps that we left for them. And then they are going to touch on the center there. So they are kind of making a vortex there. And we have to go around to fit them in the place that they need to be. Always making sure that that stays down. And again, I'm placing everything before I glue it. Okay, it's looking good. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push it slightly out of the way, just so I have enough room to go in with a, you can put the glue on a toothpick and lay it down there. If you have one of these, you could just use these. But a toothpick is a really good option when you don't have these bottles. You just put your glue on a little plate and then you pull it up with a toothpick and insert it wherever you need. So I am making sure that the lighter teal or the turquoise shape is fitting in between the two teal ones. And for that to hold, I'm putting a pin there. Then I see where it's touching the brown ring down here, and I go in there with the glue and bring it against it. And I'm just going to go around and do this with all of them. Pull it away a little bit, put some glue in there, pull it against that, secure it with a pin. And if it's not going in the space in between, you can always put the pin in the end there and kind of push it towards where you want it. Starts to get tricky when you have too many pins in there. So I switched from gluing the top and the bottom at the same time to just gluing all the tops, and then I'll go around to the bottoms. It really doesn't matter which order you do it in. You can now take the pins that were holding the center there, because everything is pushing against each other and keeping each other secure. Okay, so this is the center. Now that you have it done, we are going to move on to the feathers. As you can see here, you have two feathers that are exactly the same, and another one that is basically the same with two extra little shapes there. So for a feather, we need one of the teal shapes, two of the light brown, two of the slightly darker brown. And what we're going to do is, we have these eye-shaped, and I'm going to squeeze one of the sides real tight. And then these guys, I'm going to give a little curve on just one of the sides, just so it hugs this guy. And that's what we want. Probably need to squeeze it a little more. It's a little chubby. Okay, so now that we have that, you can let this all dry and then remove the pins. Always put your finger on top of the coils as you remove the pin, so that the center doesn't come flying out and then you panic. So always put a finger on there where you're removing the pins from. Since I need the space, I'm just going to take this off. Everything is glued by now, so it shouldn't be a problem. See, everything's staying in shape. Set it to the side, and now I can use this for the feathers. So as you can see here, they hug this shape and touch at the top. They hug the shape and touch at the top. That's what we're looking for here. So we're going to put some glue. Actually, before we do that, I will secure this little guy. Oh my goodness, can't find the with pins. Then I'm going to put some glue on the side of this guy. And I'm going to bring it around like that. Now I'm going to put a pin on this end here, so it stays right next, hugging that. I put up some glue on here. I'll line it up on the other side. Put a pin on this side so it stays connected there. And then I'm gonna just add a little more glue in between here and I'm going to force them together. And to keep them together, we add pins. And at this point, you can really move it around until they touch. This one, you don't have to be delicate and just slide it in there. You can really shape your coils to match up and stay together. And you want to use the pins to make sure they stay together. There we go. Now these guys, same thing. I'm going to squish them a little more. I'm going to give them a little curve on this side. And I'm going to do the same thing. Glue. Place them. Pin them. And since these guys, you are shaping them more drastically, you want to make sure they stay like that. So you're just going to leave that one over there, and you're going to move on to the next one right here. If you need more than one pin to hold these guys together, go for it. At this point, you want all the help you can get to keep them in place. One to go. This one as an extra set of coils to add to the mix. Process is the same though. And there we are with the feathers. Now we just have to wait for all of that to glue. We can start putting on your white ribbon. I just choose one of these sides. You can choose whichever you think it's the best to be upwards. Slide the ribbon right in between those two. And then just tie a knot. Now, if you're going to hang these somewhere, I do recommend that you give it a Mod Podge coating. So you just get some Mod Podge, and with a flat paintbrush, you just go over the whole thing on both sides. That gives it a lot more sturdiness, because if you're not careful, you can see those guys popping out. And we don't want that. So the Mod Podge really keeps everything in place. And then if you are going to hang this on a window or somewhere where daylight comes through, the sun hits, you probably want to do a spray of Krylon UV protecting clear coat, just so the colors will remain pretty for longer. So I'm gonna take a chance here and see if these guys are glued. Looks like they are. All right, for the the feathers, just gonna slide one of these strings in between the topmost feather. Then I'm gonna tie a knot on the string. And I'm just gonna push this down. That way the ends are always matching until it reaches there. Okay. So this is one of the smaller feathers. They're going to be on the side. And it's easy for you to know where to put these guys after you have this guy fixed. So the bigger feather is going to be on the opposite side, and the two smaller feathers are going to be on these guys. So next, we just slide this right in between those two and tie another knot. We want to keep this knot as close to the edge as possible, so we don't have too much of a you also have to be careful not to undo your knot. Okay, so then we are going to pull it like that, so it's kind of hidden in there, and you have your first feather connected. Let's try the other one. And this is going to be on the opposite side. If you want to glue those little tips down, you just put a little bit of glue in there, and with your scissors or something, just press it down. You can even cut the excess if there's anything sticking out, like that little guy. But it really helps hold the string in place if you glue it down. Last one. See, despite our efforts to push these two together, there's always a little gap in there, and that's fine because we need it for this. And there you have it. your Quilling Dreamcatcher all finished up. Don't forget to do those finishing steps if you want to hang it somewhere where it's going to be rough and tumbled. And I hope you had fun. Just do share your creations with me on my page or on the comments. And take care. Thanks.